This episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast is brought to you by the Laying It Down for Camp Bucko fundraiser being put on by the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. With local partners Wallace Kent Sprinkler, Troy Life and Fire Safety, Greater Toronto Fire Protection, Lamsar, and Joseph Hullage, with major provider of the fire hoses being brought to you by the Toronto Community Housing, we are well over the 63 kilometers required to break the world record. We're putting off the world record attempt until spring to allow for more donations to come in. www.firesprinklerpodcast.com for more information on how you can donate. Camp Bucko is the burn camp for kids of Ontario. It's open to burn survivors between the ages of 7 and 17. The camp has grown to over 70 children attending the week-long camp in August. There's no fee to attend Camp Bucko, and we'd like to keep it that way. Hoses are $20 a length to sponsor right now. All proceeds going to Camp Bucko. Thanks for your support.
Like and subscribe.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. We are on site in Detroit, Michigan at the SFPE convention. And how's everything going so far?
Wonderful, having a good conference so far, learning a lot of things.
Have you been
happy to be here?
Hitting up any of the sessions?
All of them. I've been
All
in,
of them?
or not all of them, been in each session. Whatever showed interest to me. Water supply was one of them. I know we're going to talk about that
That's
today,
what
to
we're
talk about
talking about
climate
today.
change and things that are occurring with that.
Right.
So we'll kind of dig in with that as we go.
So we might as well jump right in. First of all, who are you and why am I talking to you today?
I'm not sure why you're talking to me, but I'm Tracey Bellamy. I'm a Chief Engineering Officer with Telgian. Been involved in fire protection engineering for 30, let's say close to 35 years. Means I'm old. Been doing this quite a long time. And just happy to talk with you and be able to maybe offer some insight into water testing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the good thing is that water supply doesn't really change over the years. There's always pressure, there's always volume. You just got to kind of work with the systems to get it tested.
Well, exactly. I mean, one of the things that we do need to look at is what's the reliability of a water supply?
Right.
How we run a fire flow test, and we choose one particular moment in time when we conduct that, and that essentially is when that water test is good, or any other moment exactly like that moment. So we have to really kind of dig in, and it's a particular subject that NFPA 13 has been struggling with for a number of cycles to try to determine what's that reliability look like. How do we evaluate that, and who does that work?
Right. So starting kind of at square one, the importance of performing a water flow test and getting a water supply, getting that data. What's the purpose of having that information prior to starting a project design?
Well, and I'm going to go to two sides of this and talk about it. One, there's two things that I think we spend the least amount of time on. One is water supply testing,
right,
and the other is hazard analysis. Right. So if we don't know how much water we have available, water's the lifeblood of these systems. If you don't understand how much water you have, and on the other side, how much water you need, all of the stuff in the middle, how we lay out the sprinklers, spacing, obstructions, calculations, all of that stuff, doesn't mean anything if you didn't know where you're going and you don't know what you have to get there. You're really, and that's really why it's so fundamentally important to understand the characteristics of that water supply, so you can design properly.
So what do you like to find out first? Do you like to find out the water demand, the system demand, or do you like to find out the water supply before you even try to figure out anything?
I do think it's important to have an understanding of how much water you need.
Right.
So as you approach this site to conduct a water supply test, you know you might need 1,500 gallons per minute, or you might need 2,000 gallons per minute.
Right.
So when you're conducting that test, you can conduct it properly and make sure that you flow enough water to be representative of what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then you can do some quick analysis on site while you're there to say, does this make sense? I've conducted this flow test, and I had 100 PSI static, and it dropped down to 40 PSI, and I'm only flowing, 500 gallons a minute. And something should click in your mind, particularly when you've looked at the water utility in that area, and you know the water tower is some 2 blocks away.
Sure.
And you got 12-inch mains. Something should tell you we have a problem. And I don't, a lot of times we're, as designers, many folks go like, just give me 3 things in terms of water supply: a static, a residual, and a flow. Sometimes they don't even care where it's located. None of it, that's what we got to do.
You do want to know kind of where it is at the same time. As far as taking a step back there, knowing, generally speaking, how much water you need prior to doing a flow test, the importance of that is obviously performing a proper flow test, because you don't just want to open up one outlet on a hydrant, 2 outlets on a hydrant, or multiple hydrants to determine if you need that water supply. If your system design is going to be 2,500 gallons a minute, do you need to do a 2 outlet hydrant flow test to get your flowing pressure and your volumes, right?
NFPA 291, it's recommended practice, provides some guidance on a number of things of how to conduct these tests. And there's actually 2 tests, and I think you've talked a little bit about this before. There's tests that you might conduct to understand how much water flow can a fire department expect to be able to retrieve or get out of a hydrant that they might want to utilize. That's a single hydrant type test, and that's it's certainly valuable in that capacity. But it's not valuable in terms of sprinkler design because we're not running the water through the hydrant. But when we go out and look at conducting a test, like say you need 2,000 gallons a minute, and you know that's what you need, the standard requires, NFPA 291 requires us to do one of 2 things in terms of flow rate. It says, and it changed just recently, it used to require a 25% drop in residual to static to residual pressure. It's changed in the latest edition to 10% drop. Or meet your demand point. My personal opinion, I want you to meet the demand point or get close to the demand point. I really don't care about the drop that much. That's just my opinion. And the reason they want you to do that is when you start taking these measurements in terms of flow rate, there's an accuracy issue. You've sat and read gauges and you see it's an average.
They're not too steady.
If you have a little variation, and let's say I needed 2,000 gallons a minute and I evaluated my system or did a flow of 500 gallons a minute, a small error like that at 500 gallon per minute flow, as I move that line out, I extrapolate, the error is not, it expands. So it's intended to bound that error and control that.
So you spoke briefly on a single hydrant flow test and a 2 hydrant flow test, or more than 2 hydrant flow tests.
It could be more than 2 or larger
2 or 3, absolutely, if you're doing a large refinery where you need substantial water flows. What's the difference between the 2 types of flow tests? You spoke about a single hydrant flow test. That's primarily for color coding NFPA hydrants.
Color coding the hydrant, or even information to that fire service folks that want to understand when I get on the fire ground and I'm looking to get water out of a hydrant, how much can I expect to have available from an individual hydrant or a number of hydrants that's out there. 291's actually kind of morphed a little bit to make that clarity there and say there's 2 different tests. A number of jurisdictions I have dealt with will say this is the way we run the test. We do a single hydrant test. Here's the information. Take it or leave it. Not going to do anything else for you. I will say that if you do that and that data is used for sprinkler design, it's generally very conservative because you're not only evaluating the friction loss in the underground piping, but the friction loss that occurs in the leg going over to the hydrant and the hydrant barrel and all that. So it is conservative, and generally people, and I'm not opposed to this, saying conservative is not a bad thing, unless you're writing the checks and paying the money. If it makes a difference between adding a fire pump to a project and no fire pump. So there's times where being conservative is very costly, and we need to make those value proposition decisions about what's the risk and what's the value.
It's kind of a value engineering.
Absolutely.
From that standpoint. Obviously, if you're doing, I refer to them as a water main capacity test, that's the test you want to do for sprinkler design.
Correct.
And the purpose of that is to determine how much water you're getting actually flowing through that hydrant. So walk through the process of doing a water main capacity test.
I think one of the first things I like to do is speak with the public utility. Have an understanding of how their system works, what you're going to expect out there. The water tower that feeds this site has got an elevation of 100 feet above grade at that location, and that's going to result in 100 feet would be about 43, 44 PSI. Have these things in your head. Before you do know how much volume or whatever you need, know what you expect to see there, so that you know what something that's unexpected looks like. Too many times we go out and run a fire test or run a flow test and come back with data only to say this doesn't make sense, and then you have to return that's out there. That's one of the most valuable things that's done. Set that test up in a way that's most representative of what you want to do. Where are you going to place your gauge? Where are you going to flow? Where's that thing going to be effective? Conduct the test in a way that it's most representative of how you want to use that information.
Typically for me, when I'm doing fire hydrant flow tests, I like to flow past the project and then take the residual shortly past it or shortly before.
Multiple tests. It's certainly, one of the things that's not required, we typically do a static reading of our pressure. We flow water and take a residual reading, and we're done. I don't think it's a bad idea. This isn't required. Run 2 flow tests, 2 flows with the hydrant wide open and half open, and make sure all these things line up.
So the only thing with that is making sure you're not throttling the hydrant itself. Because what happens if if you get a hydrant that's not plugged down at the bottom, is
you
can
will
damage
have
the bottom.
discharge.
Yeah. So you have to have you got to have either throttle the road box or a PIB if you're in a refinery that has a PIB.
You can. I've been on flow tests where even with the static reading, we go. You should open that hydrant fully to close off the drain ports out there, because it will erode underneath it. And I had a water authority said I was nuts and didn't care. And I said, he said, all you got to do is crack it open, you'll get a pressure reading. And I said, you're exactly right, but this is just not good for the hydrant.
Right.
Before we left, water was bubbling up around it, and he said, "What's that?" I said, "That's what I told you."
That's what you just did.
but having that understanding of it, I think the next thing is having the right equipment.
Right.
And calibrating equipment. The NFPA 291 recommends we calibrate. It doesn't absolutely require it. Yep. We should be using good gauges. You buy normal commercial gauges. It's typically a 323 gauge.
Right.
That's out there. It's 3% accurate in the bottom quarter. In the mid 50%, it's 2% accurate, and 3% in the top. And that's 2 and 3% of what? It's the gauge range.
The entire gauge.
If you have a 300 psi gauge, and I wouldn't recommend it, that's 9 psi inaccurate.
That's right. That's the difference between passing and failing a sprinkler system.
Do we want to do that? And I think it's important to get a good 1% gauge, try to utilize it. And the calibration, it says once a year is a recommendation. My suggestion is, why don't you do a cursory type certification or calibration every time you use it?
Sure.
You have a butt cap on the hydrant, you pop your gauge on, and you read that gauge, and it says 50. You got 3 gauges.
Another gauges, yeah, exactly.
5 on, they all read 50 psi. Wonderful. You continue on. Do that every time you can.
Yep.
Because I go, why do you want to wait a year?
How do you
Until
feel,
you know that you've got a bad gauge.
Where do you sit with using a liquid field gauge or a digital gauge?
Certainly the liquid field gauges are going to snub some of the bounce or stuff. There's good quality gauges that are out there that are going to allow you to do that.
Yep.
Some of the digital gauges out there they'll lock in on the number very well.
Yeah.
But there's expense, and I've heard so many times that those are too expensive. The right tools for the right job are always
Absolutely.
essential.
I haven't switched over to a digital gauge yet, but I've been looking
and
at
I haven't
them,
been using those, but
them,
and some of it's old school. But you just having the right equipment and utilizing. Even I've had folks that go out with a printed sheet that shows pressure and outlet size, right?
Yep.
And they look at it and say, okay, with 2.5-inch outlet, and I had 20 psi pitot, and they swipe across and said that's whatever, got 750 gallons worth.
Sure.
And I ask a question about, well, what's the coefficient that was used with that? And they say the COA who?
Yeah.
What does this mean? And you got the inside of the barrel. And you should check that always, right?
Absolutely.
But I understand these tools that you have, forms and sheets and stuff. I understand people are reluctant at times to do math.
Right.
I mean, 29.83 times and all that.
Yeah.
But do that and have the right tools to do that. Checking the outlet diameter. I'll measure it every time I pull out. I've got a little teeny ruler that I'll pop up there, and I've seen outlets that it's a 2.5-inch outlet in my head, 2.5, right?
Absolutely.
And you measure, and it's slightly less, slightly more than that.
Right.
Put your fingers in and
matter,
feel the outlet and see is it a 0.9, a 0.8, or a 0.7.
Yep.
Or if it's an FM job, FM actually says use a coefficient 1/10 less than that for each of those. So it's 0.8, 0.7. What is it? Just small things, but these are things that we need to understand. I would read 291.
So
if you don't have a copy and haven't read it, you should read it.
And the online version is totally fine. You don't have to have a specific printed out one, but a lot of AHJs are starting to look into this. I'm seeing it in my neck of the woods where they're starting to question the process from flow test because of other contractors. How did you do that flow test? Can I witness your next flow test? Absolutely, come watch me do a flow test. I'll show you, I'll teach you, I'll show you how to do so that if you're witnessing another flow test, you know if it's being done properly.
Yeah. And I always encourage folks, witness the flow test.
Yeah,
if you're given data, and we are, lots of folks say, here's the data, we're not going to let you flow it. I just want to understand how it was done, try to understand where it was effective, the effective point of that, make sure the equipment was correct, make sure the readings were taken correct. But it's not always possible, but anytime I can engage that and actually help people understand how you run the flow test, why you run the flow test in a certain way.
It's a good excuse to get out of the office.
Absolutely.
Get out of the office, see the guys, see how they're doing the flow test, and do it yourself. Tracey, thanks for coming on and talking about our supplies, man. Let's talk again soon.
Oh yeah, anything you want to talk about, I'll talk.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.